Salvete Discipuli, and welcome back to chapters 11 and 12. And we're going to talk today about the dative case. The dative case here is the case of the indirect object. Indirect object. Let's see what the endings look like to begin with, and then we'll get involved in indirect objects, which is English grammar, and French grammar, and Spanish grammar, and Italian grammar. Indirect object goes into all the Indo-European languages. Let's look at our noun chart first. And this is the last case that we need to learn. All right, we have five major cases. Nominative, the case of the subject. Genitive, the case of possession, where we use the word of in English. Dative, the case of the indirect object, which I'm going to elaborate on in a few minutes. Accusative, the case of the direct object. And ablative, the case used with certain prepositions that put their object in the ablative case, like in, ex, ab, cum, and so forth. So is the ablative case. We have three declensions, 1, 2, and 3. And this will complete your declension chart for declensions 1, 2, and 3. In January, we'll be taking declensions 4 and 5. But right now, this more or less pulls it all together. All right. The first declension, we're going to have singular and plural. This is our number, singular and plural. The number means singular or plural. And we'll put the nominative case in first. A, A-E. Nominative, singular, and plural. Genitive, singular, and plural. A-E, A-R-U-M. And you might say, well, how do I tell the difference between A-E and the nominative plural and A-E and the genitive singular? You do it by context, how it's used in a sentence. Does it make any sense? If it's the A-E here, it'll be the subject form and the verb will agree with it. That's how you tell. It looks like that. Looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, probably a duck. Dative case now also ends in A-E in the singular and I-S in the plural. Accusative singular, A-M in the singular, A-S in the plural, and then A with a long mark. We put a long mark here at what we call a macron to differentiate it from the nominative form here. And then I-S over here. Notice that you have the ablative singular, the ablative plural and the dative plural have exactly the same ending. And this coincidence or phenomenon will continue in the second and third declension, that the dative and ablative plural will be exactly the same form, same ending. Okay, our second declension here, which is masculine and neuter. This is feminine, with a couple of exceptions. Words that end in A tend to be feminine. And remember, when a word is listed in your vocabulary, they'll give the nominative and genitive so that you know definitely what declension this noun is in. Once you see this genitive, you know, because if it ends in A, it could be an ablative plural. Ablative plural that ends in A. Okay, second declension, US here, or it could be a UM if it's neuter. And you'll see bellum decline in the back of your book with that. Then I for the genitive singular, it's unique to that declension. O, UM, and O. So the dative singular for the second declension ends in O. Then plural, I for the nominative plural, O-R-U-M, genitive plural, I-S, same as the first declension for dative plural, O-S, accusative plural, and I-S for dative plural. And there you are. Again, the dative and ablative plural are exactly the same ending. These are the sets of 10, the decades here. Third declension, remember, there's no standard ending for the third declension. It could be anything in the nominative singular. But the genitive singular ends in IS, dative singular in I, accusative EM, and ablative E. Plural ES, UM. You could possibly have an IUM with some nouns, and that's called I stems. You'll see a download sheet in your files for downloading which will explain I stems. It's not a big deal. But I stems tend to have an I here, like the third declension adjective puts an I rather than an E there, and an IUM in the genitive plural. It's nothing to worry about, but when you see it, that's what's going on. There's not a mistake in the book. Here we have IBUS for the dative plural, ES for the accusative plural, and then IBUS. And remember, this declension is masculine, feminine, and neuter. This is our gender. It has all three genders in it. Second declension is masculine and neuter. It has two genders in it. And first declension is feminine. Let me just add the neuter varieties in here. If this were neuter, it would end in A here. It would end in an A here. It ends in UM here. It would be a UM over here. You can check in the back of your book for these declensions. They're all in there with examples. I'm just putting the endings in here now. If we had a neuter noun here, the ending here for the neuter would be whatever the question mark position is up here. Whatever it is. For example, the word for time is tempus. T-E-M-P-U-S. That's not a second declension masculine noun. It's a third declension neuter noun. It's tempus, temporis, tempi, tempori, and then tempus. So if it's tempus here, it's tempus here. This is for neuters only. Tempore. You've heard of a person being elected secretary pro tempore, meaning that's for just the meantime. Then this would end in A here, and then a plural if it were neuter. And this also would end in A. And our rule for neuter nouns, even though this chapter is not on neuter nouns, we had that a long time ago. Neuter nouns, whatever they are in the nominative, they're going to be in the accusative. Just remember that as I repeat. Repetition's the mother of learning. Repetitio est mater studiorum, or studendi, if you like. Okay, so there's the dative case, what it looks like. We have now filled in completely our declension chart. We have all of our cases. We have all of our endings, singular and plural. We have two more declensions, but don't worry about them until after January when we go into chapters 19 and 20. Okay, so that's what it looks like, folks. Take a good look at that. Your noun charts, which you can download from the files for downloading. You should have these all completed and memorized. Memorize. These must be memorized. Let me say it again. These must be memorized. So whatever techniques you use for memorization, they must be memorized. If you were to, in a play for the school or something like that, your English teacher put on a play, you'd have lines to memorize. So however you do that, you need to memorize them. Okay, let me take this away here. And let me show you how we use the indirect object in grammar. I'm erasing all of our endings. Okay, again, we're at Mann Middle School here in San Antonio. The principal has been very gracious in school district in allowing us at Learn and See to come in here and use this for you. Now, how do we use the indirect object? Well, it's not used all the time. That's why we introduced it as the last. And let me get rid of tempus up here so you're not looking at it. Okay, what I'm going to say about the indirect object is true in English or in Latin. We have basically three verbs. The verb to tell, the verb to give, and let's see, you give something to somebody, you can tell something to somebody, you can show. These are the most common verbs used that set off an indirect object. They set it off. In Latin, one of the verbs to tell is narrare, and you will see this on your National Latin exam, very definitely. In fact, you will see all the uses of the cases on your National Latin exam in March. Dare, first conjugation verb, is a verb to give. And to show, we can use monstro or demonstro, monstrare. To tell, to give, and to show. Verbs like this will create a situation which will cause an indirect object to occur in any language. In any language. Okay. For example, in English you say, Mary gives, and let's say Mark, a book. Mary gives Mark a book. This is the subject. This is the verb. This is the direct object. What does she give? A book. And this is your indirect object in English. And in English, we can change the word order one other way. We can say, Mary gives a book to Mark, almost like it's a prepositional phrase, which it's not. It's an indirect object form there. So we can say, Mary gives Mark a book, or Mary gives a book to Mark. We've been doing that in all our lives in English. How does this play out in Latin? Mary's the subject, so we're going to put her Maria. First declension noun, Maria. The verb gives is dat, and I'm going to leave some space here. Because the Romans like to do it this way. They like to put subject, indirect object, direct object, and then verb. They don't have to do it that way, but they prefer to do it that way. Now, here's our direct object, and we're going to put direct objects go in the accusative case. Librum. Liber, libri, libro, librum, libro. Library. Okay? So there's your direct object. Maria, Mary, gives a book. We need an indirect object. We need to take Marcus, who was a second declension noun, and make him into a dative. The dative singular of the second declension, look at your chart, ends in O. So this is going to be Marco, just like Marco Polo, there it is. Maria Marco librum dat. Okay, let's say Mary gives Anna a book. Well, that would be first declension, ending in AE, Anai. Let's say Maria gives her mother a book. Mother is mater, mater matris, third declension, and therefore it would be M-A-T-R-I. Third declension, dative singular, ends in I, matri. See how this is working out? It really is very simple if you associate it with what you know in English already. It's really nice when Latin and English shake hands so that you can, whatever you knew in English, you can apply it to Latin. It doesn't happen all the time, but most of the time it really does. So the stronger you are in English, the better you are in Latin. And the weaker you are in English, the more you'll understand English because of taking Latin. I learned all my English grammar by taking Latin as a freshman in high school. So there you go. So you're a winner either way taking Latin. So there's the indirect object. That's really all there is to it. It's used with verbs of telling, giving, and showing. You expect an indirect object to occur. Okay, I think that about winds it up. And I'll see you for the next chapter. Well, Ate Skipperly.